That is every time I watch that movie, the animated movie, I get.
You gotta specify.
I do. How about that? I have to specify.
Well, that's the world we're living in. We are living. We must be living in another Disney Renaissance because we're getting all the same movies again. That's for darn sure.
Thanks.
I wish you could, man. That brought this podcast to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
All of its mood just completely tanked.
All right, welcome back to the Why Do I Talk to You podcast. This is Saul Starsheep talking to you over here.
This is Dave, Gamer Dave, talking to you over here.
Before we start, first of all, if you are so far our most loyal listener, which would be you've listened to 2 episodes, including this one, you probably will notice a fairly dramatic
market shift.
A fairly dramatic upswing in our recording quality. We can just blame that on me because I guess all the technical stuff is on my shoulders now.
I don't know nothing.
Good for you.
Yep.
And
Hayes did not know anything, apparently. That's what I'm learning.
So basically, I mean, without getting too boring into it, I made a decision and it was a bad one. Didn't make for a horrible episode, but if you've actually heard the first one, you probably know what I'm talking about. If not, then go there and get us some views because we are desperate. Anyways, here we are now. We are on not a new, but on a better method of recording us, and hopefully this will not die on me as it did just a couple of minutes before we started recording. So we're just gonna treat this as if it's like a live bomb that you can't like spit at or like sneeze at because it's just gonna go off. And so I'm just gonna be over here. Dave, you'll be over there.
Yep.
And then in everything, we're not gonna lose this.
Nope.
We're not gonna lose this.
Nope, we're gonna be fine.
Because we have no backup.
Yeah, that's true. If we lose it, it'll just be another special feature on the DVD.
On the DVD. On the DVD.
On the DVD.
On the DVD. Not the Blu-ray.
No.
Not the digital release.
What are we? How much? We're not Rockefellers. We don't make... No. DVD. 100%.
All right. So, great. DVDs. So,
Speaking of DVDs...
full disclosure, we were going back and forth a lot on what we were going to bring forth on the second episode. Our first episode was, mostly focused on video games, specifically the upcoming re-release of the Generation 2 Pokemon games. That's something that's like pretty, near and dear to our hearts, and we wanted to talk about it because it's our dang podcast, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we're not just about video games, we're losers in other areas too, meaning specifically movies, and even more specifically Disney movies of all shapes and sizes. So we were going back and forth on what we should talk about. We were thinking about maybe Pixar movies, but that's a really broad sort of area right there too. And then we were going to do like a top 10, and maybe we will do one in the future, but that might have gotten really messy as far as 2 people talking about their top 10s and maybe fighting about them and whatnot. Or maybe we weren't going to fight at all because we happen to really like a good majority of the Pixar movies. So we then thought about the Disney movies, and specifically more recent Disney movies, and even more specifically than that, the Disney Renaissance, and if we happen to be in another Disney Renaissance. Now, for those of you who don't really know what I'm talking about, the Disney Renaissance is usually referred to the movies from about The Little Mermaid and arguably up to about Tarzan.
That's what I've always heard, that it's sort of... that Tarzan was the bookend.
Mm-hmm. Tarzan pretty much killed the Disney Renaissance.
It's not a bad movie. It's just... it was just very different from everything that had been before it.
Yeah.
I'd watch Tarzan right now. I'd be like, yeah, I'll watch Tarzan. It's fun.
Okay, you can do that. I'll be over there.
Do you really not like it? That's interesting.
I don't really like it.
Huh, okay. Well, that's not the point of this podcast.
Well, not yet.
Maybe some other time.
Not yet, at least. So then, now that Disney movies have sort of taken back or taking a shift back to princess movies and fairy tale movies and whatnot.
I think, I want to sort of jump in there because I think the biggest shift back, and you can argue with me a little bit, but I think the biggest shift back was a shift back to sort of Broadway style musicals, because after Tarzan took sort of a step, as you sort of transition to the Lion King in the Disney Renaissance, it kind of got a little bit more poppy, which isn't to say there was anything wrong with the music of the Lion King, but it went in a direction that was much more, these are sort of the these are artists who are known for stuff that isn't just like Broadway or that's style, and that's sort of culminated in what we got in Tarzan. And then you sort of strayed away from musicals for quite a while. We had Home on the Range. That had music in it, supposedly. I didn't get past the intro scene, so I can only go off what I've been told.
Well, let's talk about because you mentioned the Broadway stuff, and that is a gigantic reason as to why the Disney Renaissance movies flourished. Up until then, we had movies, we had tons of movies with songs in them since the beginning. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had songs in them.
Yeah.
And I'd say most Disney movies always had some sort of song sequence in them, even if they weren't strictly musicals. Did Great Mouse Detective have songs in them?
I don't. It had at least one, and it's the only one I could think of off the top of my head, which is Radigan, which is fantastic.
The villain song, right?
Yeah, the villain song.
Yeah.
But I actually don't remember any other ones in that movie now that I'm...
Well, because because then a lot of times in like the 70s and like even the 80s, like songs and movies were a little more obligatory than like a work of art. You know what I mean? The 1989 Little Mermaid, that's when a dramatic shift happened, when they specifically hired Alan Menken, who at the time I think was most known for Little Shop of Horrors. I think he had just done that, or was like in the process of, or had done other things before then, and they were like, this guy is Broadway through and through. Let's get him to write our songs and to do the music. And that was huge. The movie itself was written and shot and directed and performed on a musical standpoint to be just like a Broadway show. If you think about it, well, let me move forward a little bit here. Little Mermaid does that very well too, but I can't think of a better example than Beauty and the Beast. There's the prelude where we hear the Beast story and whatnot, and then the first song happens, Belle. That is every time I watch that movie, the animated movie, I get.
You gotta specify it.
I do. How about that? I have to specify.
Well, that's the world we're living in. We are living. We must be living in another Disney Renaissance because we're getting all the same movies again. That's for darn sure.
Thanks.
I wish you could, man. That brought this podcast to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
All of its mood just completely tanked. So you can tell where he stands on this, but
oh boy.
Oops.
I guess you know what? No, never mind. That's tangential. Let's move on. Anyway, Belle introduces the character of Belle, obviously, but like the way that the song is structured, the way that all the characters are interacting with each other, the little bits and pieces of the townspeople kind of like interjecting in their part in the song and whatnot, it sounds like Broadway. It sounds exactly like Broadway, how Broadway shows open. How if Beauty and the Beast wasn't a show already on, or if Beauty and the Beast wasn't a movie and it was going straight to the stage, that's exactly how it still would open, So, and you were mentioning before, like, other movies like Lion King kind of took it in a slightly different direction, but still had songs as a very central portion of the movie itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lion King still follows that format excellently. If I'm not mistaken, that was the first one to actually go on to Broadway, right? That was the first Disney animated to actually...
I can't verify that. I want to say that since Beauty and the Beast was before Lion King, that maybe it went there first, but I can't verify that. I do know that Lion King probably has more traction on Broadway than Beauty and the Beast does.
It seemed like it, but in any case, more what I was going for was the style. Like, it wasn't Menken anymore. They were going out and getting name guys who were known for other sort of pop music stuff to write their stuff, and it worked, but it was just sort of a direction that sort of led them to what Tarzan wound up being with.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of that, I mean, just as a side note on Lion King, a lot of that has to do with direction, because the same musical team also returned for The Road to El Dorado.
Yeah. Well, they can't all be gems, I guess.
Okay, and then we move on, from Lion King, then there's like Pocahontas, and by this time, Disney and Menken, and I think Steven Schwartz is now the lyric writer, because Howard Ashman passed away after writing Beauty and the Beast. Steven Schwartz kind of became, paired up with Alan Menken a lot. And Pocahontas, without talking so much about the movie, because I know that can be a sort of a tepid response, the music was still a central part of it.
Music was fantastic in that movie.
But
like, whatever you say about the movie, like that,
yeah.
The music was excellent.
We move on to Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is an absolute
Same
masterpiece.
thing. Yeah.
Absolute masterpiece.
Well, maybe you should clarify a little bit, because we've discussed this a little bit off air, where you've talked about how you think the movie has problems, but in terms of the music, it's an absolute masterpiece. So are you saying, I just want to clarify a little bit, are you saying the movie as a whole, or are we talking just the music?
Well, I guess if I'm talking about the movie as a whole, there are issues, but I have literally no issues with the music.
Yeah.
So I guess if I were to say the whole story, the whole package, I guess, probably not a masterpiece, but the music on its own is an absolute masterpiece. The songs are the songs are just
they're fantastic. It's hard to say, what can you say about them?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's no way that we're gonna fight about that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we move on to Mulan, which is also good. Again, kind of
Hercules came before Mulan.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And Hercules is another one of those movies that sort of gets forgotten, and we can kind of come back to that, to these movies that are sort of they're good, but they don't quite elicit the same response. I love Hercules. I think it's a really fun movie, and I think the music is still really good. I'm just not sure if it fit what they were going for in the movie as a whole. But anyway, you get Hercules and Mulan.
Well, I guess with Hercules they were trying to set a different tone. You know what I mean? Because they had the gospel feel around the whole thing. Mulan. Mulan. I think you could argue that Mulan is a little bit more, a little bit closer to Broadway stylings again. It's still, Mulan has fantastic songs in it. Hercules has fantastic songs in it too. I wouldn't say that I love every single song from there, but it has good songs. I wouldn't shake my tail at it. Hunchback, everything is perfect. Pocahontas, there might be a couple of songs I'm not okay with. Lion King, Aladdin, these are all just great things. Okay, then we arrive to Tarzan. Okay, 1999. Now, the soundtrack to Tarzan, the songs, not the whole soundtrack itself. The soundtrack was written by Phil Collins. Okay.
Yeah, sure was.
Sure was.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Now here's the thing. Poppy. There's only a few. There's maybe only one song in all of Tarzan that's sung by the characters.
Yes.
The rest
that
of
was
them,
a drastic shift.
Yes, the rest of them are sung by Phil Collins himself. Now, side note. Toy Story. When Toy Story came out in 1994, that Disney told them that they need to have songs in them. John Lasseter was like, I don't really think it's gonna fit. I don't really think it's gonna fit. And they're all like, well, we're bankrolling this, so you're doing what we say. So to sort of compromise, John Lasseter brought in good old Randy Newman to sing songs in there instead, to sort of have the pop music aspect in there and whatnot, and that worked perfectly. So
I might disagree a little bit, but
okay.
Do you really think about that scene? I never think about that song when he's playing with Buzz all the time, and Woody's getting all jealous. I can't remember that song.
You never think of that song?
No, it's just I
that
guess
is one of the catchiest songs in the whole movie. Second only to "You Got a Friend in Me."
"You Got a Friend in Me" is really good, but that's
one of the catchiest songs in the whole movie.
I'm glad you think so.
Strange things are happening to me.
All right, well now we all know what songs Randy Newman impression sounds like.
Things.
All right, well we can
it's
cut
great.
It's whatever.
It's great. It's super catchy.
It was unnecessary. You always talk about.
What do you mean unnecessary? It actually pushes the movie forward. It does what a song is supposed to do.
I don't think it does. I don't think it was necessary. That's a big thing that you actually always harp on, and I'm actually not as much a stickler of. I think if the music is good, then if it moves forward the plot and what the movie's doing, yes, obviously that's really important, but it's not like strictly necessary. Like it needs to move it this much or else. Think of
another good song inside of a Disney movie. Let's see if it's because it pushes the plot forward or like establishes characters or whatever like that.
Okay, Under the Sea.
Under the Sea.
Under the Sea is a fantastic song. I don't think it's necessary for the plot at all. All it does is serve as like a point for Ariel to run off while Sebastian is distracted. It shows that, hey, Sebastian likes living in the ocean. Great, wonderful. Like, what else?
It's trying to show you what like awesome life it is down under the sea.
Why do we need to know that?
Because Ariel, like, we want to well, we don't want, but like they want to try to keep Ariel down there.
They do, but I don't care that they do. Like, I don't understand why that's like Sebastian is like his job security is influenced by the fact that he's got to keep her down there. Like, I understand he like it doesn't. Under the Sea is please understand me when I'm saying this. Under the Sea is arguably my favorite Disney song of all time, period. Okay, there's only a couple that even compete with it, but I don't think it is necessary at all for the forward movement of that plot. Couldn't you make an argument for the Les Passants? Like, that's not necessary at all. Like, it's a side scene with this joke character so we can have some visual gags with him and Sebastian.
Well, now you have to compare the weight of Les Poissons with Under the Sea. Now you're saying that those songs like are exactly the same.
No, I'm not saying they're exactly the same. I'm saying
if you're comparing them, then you are.
I'm saying they're similar.
Because there's a difference between having like the song and then just having like a gag. Because that's all that ends up being. It's like a quarter of the length of Under the Sea.
That's true.
Has only one singer, and it's just a cook that gets the snot kicked out of him by Sebastian by the end of it. It's just meant to be funny.
Yeah. And that's fine. And in my opinion, Under the Sea is just meant to be super fun and awesome. They got the animation they do during that is fantastic. Like, the entire feel of that song, like, man, just put that on in front of me and I will watch it. But if you're talking about moving the movie forward and moving the plot, you could absolutely do without it. I don't really get how you can make an argument that, man, when this later happened, I was so glad they advanced X and Under the Sea. Like, I really get how important it is that the sea is awesome and she's dumb. Because you can tell that the sea is awesome and she's dumb, like, without that.
Well, I think without that, we'd be seeing Sebastian as, like, the pushover. Just sort of, like, going along with things.
He is a pushover.
And just, well, you know what? Now at least he had a song to try.
That's what really matters. And that he tried.
And the fluke is the Duke of Soul, right?
I needed
to know that. I needed to know that.
In the context of the song, like in terms of entertainment, I did too, but not for the progression of the movie.
So anyways, we came from Toy Story and then from Tarzan. The point of that saying that I feel, I mean, I can't verify this, maybe it's there, but that they utilize Phil Collins as much as they did on Tarzan because it worked for Pixar and Randy Newman in Toy Story 1, in a way, I guess,
debatably.
But again, a lot of people, myself included, sort of credit Tarzan as ending the Disney Renaissance. The music, just as a whole, was not as good. The movie as a whole, and this is personal, I know Dave disagrees, but just I wasn't into the movie as much at all. And I think after Tarzan, the next like Disney like movie to come after Tarzan would be either Emperor's New Groove. I think Emperor's New Groove was the next one to come after that. Emperor's New Groove was that?
This is a great movie. Sorry,
it's an awesome movie. But here's the thing. Now we have to start talking about like what made the Disney Renaissance the Disney Renaissance? Was it just called that because they just had a long string of just like really good movies that they're investing a lot of money in, or was it because they were truly doing something new with art? They were like really like flourishing more with the artistry of what they were doing. Because before it's not like they were doing terribly.
No, not at all. I think like if we're talking about what came out right before, I think that The Great Mouse Detective is a great movie. But it's not, I would never really argue it was part of the Disney Renaissance at the same time. Like, there's a very clear delineation, and it's not just because everyone says that it's, it starts with The Little Mermaid and that was it.
Yeah, and like, I mean, Oliver and Company was before that also, although...
I kind of had a little bit of the musical. They were working up to The Little Mermaid. It's kind of interesting to think about.
And I think like The Rescuers Down Under was either before then or like around the same time. Yeah, like
it was actually after the Little Mermaid. That's like the black sheep of the Disney Renaissance. It's like there's Little Mermaid and all these other musicals. Oh, and there's this movie about mice, I guess, and they fly on a bird.
But like in the 80s, okay, if we're talking straight up Disney movies, in the 80s we had The Great Mouse Detective. We love it, but it's not what we would consider the Renaissance.
Yeah.
The Black Cauldron, nobody really cares about that movie. Fox and the Hound, again, not part of the Renaissance, but it's a liked movie.
It's a classic, yeah.
Yeah. And if we go beyond Tarzan, Fantasia 2000, whatever, Dinosaur was there though.
That was a thing that happened.
That was their first foray into trying to compete with Pixar.
Even though they were Pixar, I guess. I don't know.
Basically, they weren't officially whatever. Emperor's New Groove, right?
Which it's worth noting in production was supposed to be a musical.
That's correct, and Sting was actually supposed to do the music.
Yes, that's correct. And there's remnants of that on the I think on the soundtrack of that, because I'm terrible with names, and you'll learn this if you continue listening. I'm terrible with actors and their names, but
everything else.
Thank you. Great. The actress who played Yzma was very well known. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Solomon. She was really well known for her voice, I hear, and for singing. And so they were kind of going to feature her, and then it just kind of didn't happen as the movie got rewritten and
went into what they call development hell, because it was originally supposed to be an actual play on the story The Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah. Which it kind of still is. I guess not really.
No, it's not.
Okay, fine.
It went through just a lot of production problems, and then they retooled the whole movie basically, and then we got The Emperor's New Groove, which is a fan-freaking-tastic movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Again, love the movie. I don't know if I consider that a Disney Renaissance movie. I like to consider that a little bit outside. It's not a musical, for one thing. It takes itself a little bit less seriously than some of the other Disney movies that came before it in the Renaissance. We can say it had more of a focus on comedy. It's not like it didn't try to tug at your heartstrings a little bit, but it was mostly based on trying to get you to laugh, right?
Yeah.
Freaking Kronk and Yzma was the most hilarious villain couple ever, honestly. Yeah. And Pacha, and we could talk about this forever. Emperor's New Groove is a great movie.
It's a great movie, and I think we don't want to spend too much time on what came in between. And I think you can look and you can say, yeah, there were some good movies that happened in this sort of interim period between what is pretty much agreed on as being the Disney Renaissance and what we want to talk about as maybe being a new Renaissance. Atlantis was a movie. I actually liked that movie. It definitely had problems, but I saw a lot of potential in it, and I enjoyed my time with it. Lilo and Stitch is, I don't know if I want to say underrated, because I know how much that bothers Solomon, but it doesn't, because it sort of came in that weird period where Disney was doing all kinds of weird stuff, and even its advertising campaign struck me as weird, where they're like, drop it into all these Renaissance, like they were trying to play on the fact, this is still Disney Renaissance. Like, no, it's not, but it's a great movie. The stuff they touch on that movie.
I don't know if that was their intention with that, but I know what you mean, though.
Yeah. Treasure Planet, that was a movie that happened. There's a few.
Treasure Planet, I think, was specifically to compete with Titan AE. Do you remember that movie?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move.
I watched Treasure Planet once and it was fine. It was good. Whatever. There's a few Winnie the Pooh movies in here. Brother Bear. Home on the Range.
There we go. Home on the Range was actually written by Alan Menken, the music.
Yeah. Meet the Robinsons. A lot of people like that movie. It's not my thing. It really does surprise me how long this period was, where Disney was just putting out stuff that was kind of like, all right.
Disney was putting out stuff that also, The Wild is in here too. You remember The Wild? That was their direct response to Madagascar.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, it was like unabashedly copied Madagascar.
That's kind of all I remember about it, is that it was like Madagascar. But anyway, we went all the way up to Bolt was kind of the last one, and I never saw Bolt. I heard people say it was good, but it never blew anyone's socks off. No one was like, Disney's back, baby, and this dog did it. All right. You're not seeing a whole bunch of Bolt paraphernalia or whatever floating around Disneyland. You see a bit, but you can say that for almost anything. And then we get to December of 2009, which is when Princess and the Frog hits. And this is sort of the period that we want to focus on and sort of talk about, is this when it started? Did it ever happen? What's going on here? So
Princess and the Frog was a direct response to go back to traditional 2D animation, because up until then they had been doing a whole lot of 3D animation.
With like Bolt and Meet the Robinsons specifically were some recent ones.
Right. In fact, if I look through the list again, I don't think there was another 2D animated film since Home on the Range. Unless you want to count some of these
in there, the Wilds. Yeah.
Unless you want to count some of these Winnie the Pooh movies, which you shouldn't.
Come on, man.
Tell me you've seen them.
No, I haven't.
That's what I thought.
But the one that came in this period, I did see, and I liked it quite a bit.
The Heffalump one?
No, the one that came during this. I think it was just called Winnie the Pooh. I should specify the one that came out most recently within this supposed.
That one I didn't see. I should have.
It's quite good. It's clever.
Okay.
Anyway,
so all right, Princess and the Frog. It comes out. It is said to be a direct callback and sort of even like the continuation of what made the Disney Renaissance popular. So it was, by all accounts, a princess movie. It was a 2D animated movie, no 3D animation, essentially. It was, again, a fairy tale movie from a classic story that everybody knows, the Frog Princess. Okay, yep. And it was a musical too. They harped on that a lot, that it was a musical, done by our
esteemed friend, highly esteemed Randall Newman.
We don't hate him. For one thing, let me just say this. We do not hate him. It is very easy to make fun of him, but we do not hate him. He has written many songs for Disney movies that I love and I treasure a lot.
It is true. Like, I have a very specific beef with Randy Newman that has to do with Toy Story 3 and Tangled, but I'm sure we'll talk about that another time. Or if you know anything about that, you probably already know what I'm talking about. But yeah.
Good Lord.
I mean, honestly, talking about just Princess and the Frog, I think a lot of the songs in that, and I think you've come to disagree with me a little bit, I love the style of the music in Princess and the Frog. It is fantastic, but it all feels a little incomplete to me. It feels like a lot of the songs in there, they do something and you're like, yeah, I'm really down with what this is doing, and it feels like it's building to something, and then whatever it's building to never happens. It just sort of plateaus immediately. I think the very first song in the movie is a perfect example of this. Like, it's so fun, but it never crescendos. It just sort of has this very small jazz band feel, which is fine, but it never builds. It just sort of stays at that one point. And I think that's something I could say about a lot of the songs in the movie. And, that was probably a little bit of a tangent on the music specifically because Randy Newman. But I love Princess and the Frog. To me, it holds up to the movies in the Disney Renaissance. I would hold it up to those movies personally. Yeah.
I think as far as this being the starting gun of the second Renaissance, I've always never had an issue with that. Seeing after that movie came out, and it got some good response behind it too, there were lots of talks about trying to continue this streak. Fun fact, if you don't know this already, Tangled was going to be titled Rapunzel. It was not going to start this ugly trend of Disney movies that's soon to come.
Yeah.
It was going to be called Rapunzel. However, a lot of higher ups at Disney blamed Princess and the Frog not quite performing as well as it could have in the box office because of the word princess.
Well,
took away male viewers.
Yeah, the lack of emphasis on the male character in the title and in the promotion. It was very much Tiana's movie, even though I love the character development that Naveen goes through, and I love his character in general. But yeah, that was sort of the perception that it was appealing primarily to females, and they wanted to do something that's more gender neutral. And I love Tangled, but I'm super sad that it started this trend of naming. So,
so let's talk about some of these movies that we could be. If we're just gonna say for all intents and purposes, Princess and the Frog started a second Disney Renaissance.
And it should be noted that's sort of our opinion. I think a lot of people, because Princess and the Frog didn't do as well, because they felt like it didn't appeal to this full audience they wanted to get to, and because Tangled started two trends really. One, it started this ridiculous thing of like the one-word names, but it pioneered this animation style, which has become absolutely the go-to in pretty much all of the Disney movies since.
Pioneered? It's 3D animation.
It's not just okay, But this specific style, it's not just the 3D animation, it was the style they used for it. And if you go online and you do research, you can sort of see how they really tried to blend the hand-drawn style with this 3D animation. And all you need to do to see that they're basically mimicking this is go watch this movie and then go watch Frozen and then go watch Big Hero 6 and tell me what the difference is between the female characters. Spoiled, there's almost none.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I mean. All these movies since Tangled have been box office hits. They've been pretty much universally loved. Not The Princess and the Frog wasn't, but it wasn't as financially successful. And you have the fact that it started this naming trend. And you have the fact that it pioneered this specific animation style, not just 3D, but like how they were basically going to design characters in almost every movie from this point forward. I mean, even Moana, she's not that much different. She has a little bit different facial structure, but the eyes are exactly the same, and et cetera, et cetera.
So if we list some of these movies that we're going to go ahead and lump into the second Disney Renaissance, again, just based on entirely on our opinion, because at this point Disney is Disney owns everything, and they bankroll a lot of things, including Studio Ghibli. So, like,
Is it pronounced Ghibli?
It's Ghibli.
Whatever. Which, by the way, I love those movies too.
Yeah, who doesn't? But they bankroll them too for their American releases, so they are usually included in the list here, but obviously not really included in the
what we're
Disney
considering
Renaissance.
here. Yeah,
the Winnie the Pooh movie is in here too, but that probably never meant to compete with like the level of these movies, anyways.
This is very short too, which is interesting. But anyway,
Wreck-It Ralph was the next major one to come out of this.
Yeah.
Frozen was the next major one after that. Big Hero 6, Zootopia, and then Moana. That's what we have. Okay.
Yep.
So Dave and I have some very polarizing views actually when it comes to these strictly Disney releases, not Pixar releases, but strictly Disney releases. Now, what I'm wondering though is because we have these polarizing views on these movies, right? We don't really have these polarizing views on the movies of the first Disney Renaissance. Now, that could be for a number of reasons, nostalgia blinders, or it could also be because we were little kids at the time. And so we sort of see them with higher goggles, or 3, they are just that untouchable.
Well, okay, when I think of the Disney Renaissance, I think there are some movies in there that are very touchable. They are not in the realm of untouchable. If you're talking about untouchable movies in the Disney Renaissance, like, as far as I am, like, if you guys don't hate me now, you're gonna hate me now. As far as the untouchable movies of the Disney Renaissance, where I was like, that movie was excellent, and you just can't argue with how great it was. I've basically only got 3, and they are Aladdin, The Lion King, and Mulan. Those are the 3 that are untouchable. If you want to criticize the other movies, I am there. Like, I will see, and I don't, please understand, I'm not saying that they're not fantastic. And there are movies in there that we all agree are kind of like meh. As much as we disagree on Tarzan, hey, guess what? That's considered in this list, and no one's saying that's untouchable. Hey, guess what? Pocahontas is in this list. Music's untouchable. Movie is definitely touchable. Hunchback of Notre Dame. You can say everything you want about the music. I think of it more highly as a movie than Saul does. It didn't do that great at the box office. Rescuer Down Unders is in that list. As much as you may want to ignore it, yeah, it's in there. So it's not like the Disney Renaissance was completely infallible. And even if you want to say, Big Hero 6 and Wreck-It Ralph were really like a weird departure from the princess movies. They weren't even musicals at all. Like, that's kind of weird too, the fact that we can lump them in here, and they are so very different in everything except for animation style. Although I think Wreck-It Ralph had out of all these movies, it had the most differing animation style from that sort of Tangled-centric thing.
Yeah.
Even if you want to argue, these aren't that great or whatever, like, okay, fine. There were movies that weren't quote-unquote that great in the Disney Renaissance to begin with. So
then why is it called the Disney Renaissance then? Is it called the Disney Renaissance because it really took that departure?
Yeah, I think so. Like, what other movies or like what other studios were doing this kind of thing with the music? The music is like 100% what sets those movies apart, because again, and the animation too was just on such a high level, was on such a high plan. And you can look at the movies in the quote unquote new Disney Renaissance and say, yeah, this animation is spectacular. We could go on for hours about how blown away we were with Tangled. the animation in that. It is so gorgeous. Like
It still stands up today.
it absolutely does. And you can say that about the Disney Renaissance movies. Like, yeah, it's a very different style from what we've become used to for pretty much the entirety of this generation of animated films. Like, man, has anything come out that's 2D like Princess and the Frog since it? Like, I can't think of anything.
Not from a major studio, I don't think.
Yeah, but like that animation, like you're not gonna look at that and be like, no, why isn't that in 3D? Like, so that all holds up. So I think they're greater than the sum of their parts, but the animation's and even those movies that weren't that great. Is anyone going to come and tell you that Pocahontas isn't beautiful? You can criticize the color palette and say that it's a little bit washed out, but like the animation's good, the colors are still good.
That's not why you don't like Pocahontas, is the color palette.
No, I'm just saying you could criticize it.
Okay.
It's not perfect.
Because if that's what it was, then we're gonna have to fisticuffs right here.
No. I think Pocahontas is a lot more.
Not because I think the color palette is good, but it's like you're gonna take down the movie just because you didn't like the colors.
No, I'm just giving that as an example. It's not perfection, but it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think, that was kind of it. And the reason that I think people blame Tarzan for taking it out, because I still think Tarzan is a good movie. I think it could fit in the middle of the Disney Renaissance to be like, yeah, it's a Disney Renaissance movie. Like, it's good enough. The reason that it sort of takes things out of it is because of how much it changed, really, the musical style. But even the animation, I remember when it was coming up to it, like the way they did the animation's still good, but the way they did it was like drastically different from basically everything they'd done before, with the exception of like a few scenes in Mulan or something, like using more computer. And specifically, I think the scenes where he was like surfing the trees or whatever was doing some very different stuff animation wise. But
so you pretty much touched on this also, but what I think makes a movie, worthy to be like in the Renaissance, I guess, or like what made those movies in the Renaissance so different, is when you take the formula that was set by those movies and another studio does them. Prince of Egypt.
Okay.
Prince of Egypt has pretty much all of the highlights of any good Disney Renaissance movie.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful balance of the visual and the storytelling and the music.
Yep.
All three of them are completely connected. It's not one without the other.
And you can use other examples that didn't do as well, like Road El Dorado.
And even going back to Tarzan. I mean, okay, it's really going to seem like we're going to bash on Tarzan here.
Oh, you are. I mean, I'm just saying it changed.
I don't hate it that much.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Okay.
But then let's move over to what we're calling the second Disney Renaissance, okay? Tangled had beautiful visuals, had good storytelling, had great characters, had great acting, had good songs in it too that also were relevant songs and whatnot. Had horrible lyrics, but that's not really what we're talking
They
about
were
here.
subpar. I disagree. Horrible. They were not great.
Oh boy. So
It's such a
no, we're not going to
thing.
get into this right now.
I know.
We're not going to get into this right now.
I know.
So, so Tangled had all of that, okay? So, yet we're still able to lump in Wreck-It Ralph and Big Hero 6 in a so-called second Disney Renaissance. Now, a Renaissance doesn't have to... I mean, like, now we're sort of, deviating
We're
what,
nitpicking
like,
a little bit.
what an actual Renaissance is, or like what the Renaissance period from the 1500s and to the 1600s was in Europe.
Should that be our next podcast? The historical relevance of the Renaissance. If
You
it's
can
appropriate.
do that.
Other than my
I'm
wife,
just saying,
she
if we're
likes
going
it
to throw
very-
on this word a whole lot, we may as well be using it properly. You know what I mean?
Well, in the context of the Disney Renaissance, like we understand what it means in that context, I feel like. Even if we don't understand what the Renaissance was.
So then, are you completely comfortable lumping in Wreck-It Ralph as the second Disney Renaissance or part
as
of it?
part of it?
Yeah.
I love that movie. So I am completely fine lumping it in there because I think that it is a good enough movie on its own merit to belong in. And I guess I'm kind of going to contradict myself a little bit. It wasn't just the fact that these movies all had the music and the artistry. It's like, even if you pick out the worst movie in the Disney Renaissance, the second worst movie, which I would say is probably Pocahontas, considering Rescuers Down Under, quote unquote, the worst movie.
God.
Like, what?
No, I just didn't think we were lumping in that movie in there.
I mean, it's in there. It's in that time period. And every time you look at a list of Disney Renaissance, it's in there, like, sticking out like a sore thumb with the tiny amount of money it made.
Well, then we have to lump in the Tigger movie and Winnie the Pooh. Well,
the Tigger movie was way older. But if you're talking Winnie the Pooh, yeah.
We're going to lump that in there?
I saw it, and I really liked it. So I don't see a problem. The quality of the movies is there. If Disney made The Little Mermaid, is like, wow, look at this great new format they made, and then they released 5 Road to El Dorados, like, no one would be talking. And I know a lot of you out there probably love Road to El Dorado, but we don't.
What's wrong with
you? But, you know, if they released 5 subpar musical films, like, no one was gonna remember it as this, like, game-changing visionary period of, you know, movie making from them. I think a huge strength of the current period of Disney movies is that, you know, at the basis level, you want to go out and see all these movies. They make a movie and you have an expectation, this is going to be good. I want to go see it.
See, I'm just wondering, though, if just because we like the movies or just because the movies make a really big positive impact on us from watching it, is that calling it a Disney Renaissance? You know what I mean? Like, you know... I'd like to think that the first Renaissance was started because they were doing something different, and they were doing something on a much higher level than everybody else. You could still say that they're doing things on a higher level than anybody else, but are they really doing something different now? You know, it's 2017. They have since released Zootopia, which was a big sort of allegory on, like, race relations and just discrimination in general.
Which turned out to be very relevant then and now.
How about that? Let's stop. Let's stop right there.
No, it's just like, it was really interesting because I don't think a lot of people thought. I think I kind of went in thinking that it was going to be. It was very specifically aimed at that, given the time period it was released in. But given the stuff we know about the movie, it seems like it was just like they're just like, this is just the story we're going to tell, and then it turned out like, whoops, then again. But anyway, that's
Wreck-It Ralph. What did things very differently. It included a lot of video game elements. Did not have a romance, you know, as the main focus,
which was great, by the way.
Frozen also. Now, okay, so.
It's very popular nowadays to have a strong opinion on Frozen one way or the other. Mm-hmm. It is almost expected that you will have a strong opinion on it. And it turns out we do.
Now, if you've been listening to us thus far, you can probably predict what our feelings are going to be about it.
Because otherwise we would have just raved about it, like we did with everything else. And we wouldn't have to be prefacing this with, please don't hate us.
That we really very distinctly do not like Frozen.
Nope, it is pretty... whatever.
But again, this is another topic for another time. Suffice it to say that hating on Frozen is an old meme, and we're not really going to focus on that so much anymore.
Not yet.
That is to say, though, that Frozen did do things different from the norm. Okay, we don't believe that they actually like paved the way or like, you know, broke new trail like everybody else said that they did, but they did do things differently than, you know, say Tangled or Princess and the Frog. So, and Big Hero 6 also. Big Hero 6 is also is definitely a departure. You know, it's a superhero movie to some extent. I mean,
that is a Marvel property, isn't it?
I believe it is.
Yeah, it's
although
based on Marvel.
They took it and they twisted it a whole lot, though.
Oh yeah, because they're not trying to make it part of the MCU or whatever.
Right, but it is part of the Marvel property. So basically, we have a long string of movies here that don't follow like the same conventions that each of the first Disney Renaissance movies did. Moana's the most recent Disney movie out, but before then was Zootopia, so that was still like a break in the chain.
They're definitely peppering in. They're trying to pepper in these I don't want to say standard animated movies, but non-musical animated movies, sort of in between. Because if you think about it, we've only had 4 of like the typical princess musicals in this time period, and that's a pretty long time period. It's like 2009. That's like
Princess,
8 years.
Tangled, Frozen, and Moana.
Yeah. And like everything, I think we've had just about as many non-musical movies. Zootopia, Wreck-It Ralph. I guess Winnie the Pooh, if you kind of count that. So not as many, I guess.
No.
Big Hero 6. So what? 3 out of 7.
Yeah, I guess.
Is that right? Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. So again, the prevailing question is: does this qualify as a second Renaissance? I tend to say no. Some people are really, because Disney has had a long string of really successful movies here.
After a string of really mediocre movies. I think
Yes.
that's a big part of it too, is
Yes.
that we all grew up with Disney being such a huge part of our lives. Really, every generation has sort of had this period where it was like, Disney is the greatest. Like, if you go back to like, excuse me, like if you go back to Snow White and like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, like that was Disney, and that was that generation being like, wow, Disney has completely like revolutionized things. And then you kind of had these movies in between that where it was kind of like, there's some movies in there that we love, like The Jungle Book, and like I love Robin Hood, but I don't think like Robin Hood is gonna be like on anybody's like, yeah man, that really revolutionized. Like they reused a lot of assets from Jungle Book, for example. And then there's this sort of stretch, and then like Disney like hit like a truck again, like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. Like it was like, oh gosh, this is amazing, and you just kind of assumed that Disney would be great forever again, and then they kind of weren't for a long time. And so now we're in a period where Disney is once again must-see films. Like if they came out with an animated movie, you're like, even if it doesn't look like it interests you, you kind of know it's going to be good. So we are definitely, if you want to differentiate the Disney Renaissance from any other period in Disney history, I think you're right. Like I don't think that this period is as influential, or however you want to say, as that period, but it deserves its own name, right? I don't think we should call it the second Disney Renaissance, because that sort of invokes something that I think you can make a very good argument that that's not accurate. But this is a really good period of Disney movies. Mm-hmm. Like it is a great, like, yeah. In this whole list of movies, the only one that I would say I could have passed on was Frozen. And we're gonna get people disagreeing with us, but that's like the low point of this period for me. And when that movie, even then, I wouldn't say, if it came in the middle and it got as little attention as Pocahontas or whatever did, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's fine. It doesn't like, oh, we had like a mediocre Disney movie. Is their run of greatness over? It's like, no, it's fine. But it wouldn't have killed that for me. So when that's like your low point in a period, it deserves some recognition. It deserves some respect.
Are you watching Frozen over Tangled? I'm sorry, are you watching Frozen over Tarzan? How dare you
ask me that? How dare you ever ask me that, sir? Oh my gosh. No, I am never, ever, ever watching Frozen over Tangled. Like, there would have to be some serious threats on. Okay, but am I watching Frozen over Tarzan?
Yes.
Nope.
No.
I'm watching Tarzan over Frozen.
Okay. See, I'm having a hard time answering that question.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
God. See, I guess this is also tangential, but whenever I'm thinking of Tarzan, the first thing I'm thinking of is Rosie O'Donnell's stupid voice in that monkey. Like, that's what I'm thinking of first. And so that's not very fair of me, because when I think of Frozen first, I'm thinking of actually kind of a lot of different things. I might not enjoy all those things, but I'm thinking of more things than just somebody's stupid voice inside of a stupid character. I'm thinking of maybe like the visuals, because there are some really awesome visuals in Frozen.
Yeah, and the music is still good. Like, we might not like it as much as everybody. Really? That's okay. We have to discuss that in more length, because that's interesting.
This has gone. No. It's kind of the idea that you were talking about before. That one of the reasons why we hate, why we like to hate on,
we hate it.
Why we like to hate on Frozen so much is because it's so popular.
Yeah,
you can call that contrarian all day, and you're probably right, but it makes us more.
Yeah, like I said, if this movie got a Pocahontas-like reception, we probably would not say we hate it as much. Like, one of my big issues is that I feel like it, and this is somewhat irrational, but I feel like it steals a little bit of the limelight from other movies like Tangled, which I think is, or even Princess and the Frog. I think
even Moana,
great.
Even after the fact.
Yeah, Moana is so good.
It is.
It's really great.
Moana is really good. You're the one who told me to watch it.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yep.
I'm still actually kind of still watching it.
You watch it so much. I had that phase 2 when I had to take that flight out to Detroit, and it was like on the list. I was like, I don't know what I want. I was not expecting having this luxury at all. Let's just watch Moana. Like, what the heck? Why not? I mean, have we come to any conclusion here, or are we just kind of like?
You know what? I think
I've heard people try to like come up with a new name for this era. I can't remember off the top of my head. It definitely has not stuck. Like I'm not hearing it in the common.
But at the same time, it
vernacular.
wouldn't be accurate to call this a second Renaissance either.
No.
It wouldn't be accurate at all. I think
I would never like fight with someone who's like, we're in a second Disney Renaissance. Like, I don't know if I'd stop somebody.
I feel
on the
like, yeah,
street.
maybe. I mean,
Such a troll.
what?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it like that. I'd be like, yeah, maybe, sure. Because you know me, I'm not too much a fan of all the movies that have come out in this proposed time
Yeah,
period.
you're
either.
less of a fan of me. I guess we should say that. I mean, we didn't really get into it all, but you're less of a fan of.
I am
Wreck-It Ralph.
way less of a fan of Wreck-It Ralph.
You're less of a fan than Tangled,
I am less of a fan.
but you're still a big fan.
Yes, I'm not as less of a fan as Tangled as I am of Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I am less of a fan of Big Hero 6 than you are.
Yeah, not by a ton.
But yeah, exactly, not by a ton. I am less of a fan of Zootopia than you are. Also,
Again, not by a ton.
yeah, not by a whole ton. Yeah, either. So like, there's no movies in here that I hate. Frozen that I hate really that much. The movies that I say that would really excel in this area was Princess, Tangled, and Moana.
Yep. And we didn't talk about Moana at all, kind of because it's on the tail end, but
Well, I mean, we
there's
both
not a whole lot to say.
Right, we both
followed
completely
in that-
agree.
Yeah, it followed in exactly the same format as Tangled and Princess and the Frog, and it was just about as good. And
It just did it well. It
Yep.
didn't have to shove it down your throat that this was like an independent female who like doesn't like fall in love.
Did it really tastefully, and that was another. If you want to talk about doing things different, they are doing it different. And I think one big thing, a reason that Frozen got so much love, was because people really perceived that they were trying to do this different thing, and they kind of, in my opinion, they kind of try to shove it down your throat a little bit hard, where they're like, "Oh, you can't marry someone you just met." And it's like, yeah, okay, it's obvious that's what you're trying to do, but just do it. Don't make this huge big deal about it. Like, oh, because we're Disney, like, it's such a big deal that we're doing this. Like, okay, it is, but you don't have to, like, shove it in my face every 2 seconds.
Right.
And Moana does that right.
Right.
And to its credit, Frozen tried to do that. And it was doing something different from, if not everybody else, at the very least different from Disney's own history.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's something I think they've tried to do throughout, Princess and the Frog. It was very focused on the female.
Mm-hmm.
Tangled, it had the romance, so it was very focused on that. But I would still argue that Rapunzel is a much stronger and more independent character than a lot of the female characters you had in the Disney Renaissance. So you could very easily single that out as where the other movies did it with, specifically with music and animation, while this era also does that. It's not innovating it because it, they did that before, but its new thing is how they're treating female characters and how they're doing storytelling and things like that. So
Seems to be that way because even in Big Hero 6 they were like making the female characters, a little more like, independent, like kind of more on the stronger side and even more like on the mentory side.
Yeah, or even Wreck-It Ralph was not really romance focused except for the jokey side characters. But I liked Vanellope a lot, and sort of her finding her place and everything was another example of like, yeah, this character isn't reliant on the male to like do the thing, like So,
and I think that also comes out in Zootopia.
Oh, Zootopia,
Judy Hopps, she's female.
Yep.
Right. And Nick Fury. What's his name? Oh, Nick Wilde. Excuse me.
It actually might as well be Nick Fury. I wonder if they were talking about that as like Nick Fury. That's like wild. It's like animals too. Wow, we're really might as well slap an eye patch on there. Like.
Anyways, there's no romance there. Judy Hopps is pretty motivated like from the get-go.
And she is the central character.
And she's the central
Very
character
much.
too. So I mean, yeah, there is definitely that trend going on for sure. So I guess you can say that is them trying to innovate from what they were before because female characters were different and maybe motivated for well, like Little Mermaid.
Some of them were, yeah.
Little Mermaid, I think we can watch now as adults and just want to give Ariel a slap across the face.
Yeah.
Like, Belle was not like that, really. They painted her as a different girl, because she wasn't a bimbo and going after Gaston, and she was more like, she was imaginative. She read books a lot, and
That was kind of, again, and this is I'm not going to get into this because we are running on time already, but this is why I might argue that, like, Beauty and the Beast isn't super untouchable to me, because, like, Belle never stood out to me. It's like, what's the difference? She likes books, and other people don't. Like, they had to bring in these other characters, like, yeah, she likes books, and, like, they had to specifically be like, oh, Gaston doesn't like books, and these three bimbos who are chasing after Gaston don't like books, or whatever, and it's just like, okay, like, she likes books, like...
I mean, that's really scratching the surface.
Okay, that's fair, but we're not going to get into that now,
we're
I guess.
running out of time now.
Yeah.
So essentially, if we're going to wrap up this whole thing, you know, if we were, you know, to be asked, you know, are we in a second Disney Renaissance? I think, you know, that can't be answered yes or no. I think we'd have to say, like, we're definitely in an era of Disney movies that are good again, that are, like, consistently good again.
If you called this, like, a golden era, I wouldn't disagree with you.
I guess, yeah. Not the golden era, not like the only...
because that's also, like, a meaningful term in Disney lore, isn't it? I actually don't remember off the top of my head. If there's, like, a golden era that everyone's like, this is it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, this is a high water mark.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
So basically, we have the Disney Renaissance. There it is. You know, it literally, you know, it changed the game for Disney movies basically to come after it. I think every Disney movie from now on is going to have some sort of influence to that. It's kind of, I mean, and you know, the Disney Renaissance itself had, you know, multiple influences upon, like, from Snow White era, you know, those princess movies and whatnot too. And so this new era that we're talking about is just building upon the Renaissance, which is building upon OG, you know, Disney movies. Yeah. And so I guess that's a natural progression. You know, they are trying to go away from just doing standard stories, which, you know, Tangled was like the first deviation of doing standard stories anyways. Even not just withstanding the name, you know what I mean? Like, Princess and the Frog, like you said, it could be probably lumped in with the original Disney Renaissance, and you wouldn't really think of it differently. Tangled, not even just saying that it's 3D animation, could not be. There's difference to there. I don't think it could.
Okay.
Frozen could not. You know, Big Hero 6 could not.
No, Big Hero 6 and Wreck-It Ralph definitely could not. Like, yeah.
So we are definitely in a different era. It's just probably not, you know, and it's kind of hard to say that, though, because saying it's not the second Disney Renaissance might, on the surface level, make it seem like it's not quite as good as the original Disney Renaissance.
It's just different.
It just needs
its own name. Mm-hmm. So somebody out there, we can name it right now. We're not going to name it right now. You
could try.
We're not that clever.
You could try.
No.
I'd love to hear some sort of
I would too, but it's not there.
Well, upcoming up in Disney's future, we do have the next Wreck-It Ralph. Okay,
which I'm excited. Well, I guess we could kind of. I loved Wreck-It Ralph, and I hope this one's really good. Well, if we're talking, I'm hesitant about sequels in general to movies that I consider really good.
If we're talking about departures, Wreck-It Ralph 2 is going to be quite a bit of one.
I haven't really paid attention much to what the story is going to be.
It's going to be quite different. It's going to be very meta.
Great.
It's going to involve a lot of smartphone technology and.
Man, I don't like that in my video games. I don't want it in my video games.
And all the cool kid things, you know, dabbing. We're old. After that is going to come the Frozen sequel, Frozen 2. This time it's not Frozen 1. and then after that will be the Disney's take on Jack and the Beanstalk, titled
Jacked.
No.
Oh.
Gigantic.
Oh, right. I liked mine better.
Actually, that'd be hilarious.
It would be great.
So that's what's coming in Disney's future. You know, sequels notwithstanding, it does seem like they're still trying to be a little bit different. I am curious to see how Gigantic is going to fare, because presumably we're going to go back to a male lead.
Is it going to be a musical? Have they said that?
I don't know if that much has been revealed yet.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's what's coming in for the future. In the end, though, Dave and I are still pretty diehard Disney fans. I mean, Disney has our money, not like they need it, but they pretty much have like a season ticket from us. Like anytime they're going to release a new movie. I mean, we may not see that.
Literally have a season ticket from you.
Disneyland.
Well, it's Disney.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. I like to add value.
We're gonna be seeing all the new Disney movies as they come out anyways, and so if we're still podcasting by that time, if we haven't just completely lost all faith in whatever
all sanity,
all sanity, then we'll be able to get these in a review format probably for any and all listener singular.
Oh boy, we'll be relevant.
There you go.
It'll be a new feeling.
These hashtags will actually mean something.
I'm not hashtag. Yeah, you can find us on our non-existent Twitters or whatever, and hashtag us all day long.
All right. Well, that about wraps up this topic right here today. We have been talking about the Disney Renaissance in all of its exhaustion. Disney is going to be a constant trove of topics for us in the future, as we've sort of kind of scratched the surface on some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, including Frozen, including some of the other Disney movies that we're not so fond about, or some of the movies that we are very polarized about. So we have plenty more topics to come from here. Until then, I've been Solomon, Starsheep 4.
And I've been Dave, Gamer Dave.
And we are going to catch you guys on the next episode.
Take care.